Hello, I'm Alexa Fischer, founder of Wishbeads and author of the book Wishwork, and this is the Wishbeads podcast. I am so delighted that you're taking time out of your day to listen or watch. And I have a very special guest with me today. Her name is Lesley Jane Seymour. She has been a prolific media editor and writer in some of the biggest magazines in the world. Started her career at a young age at YM, which was formerly Young Miss. And she has worked for Vogue as a writer. She was the editor-in-chief of More magazine. She worked with Marie Claire. She really is, she's just fabulous. But what really inspires me about Lesley is the fact that she had the courage to completely reinvent herself. And I think this idea of change is so important, especially as it relates to wishing. Here at the Wishbeads podcast, we share true stories, but we also share the idea around taking the mystery or the fear or the hesitation around making your wishes come true. Because even though it sounds good, when you are stepping into a new way of being, living, it can be intimidating because it really means that there is change that goes hand in hand with that wish, whether it's a new career or a new relationship, a new home, a new hobby, a new way of showing up in the world. It's different. And even though on one hand we say we want it, on the flip side, we feel all of that kind of quiet anxiety of like, what is it going to be like? Or what if I wish and it doesn't come true? Or what are people going to say? And Lesley Jane Seymour has taken this desire and this expertise that she has shared with millions and millions and millions of readers in print, and took all of that and turned it into a new community that she's built called Covey Club. Now, she is the founder and CEO, but it is a community that is based on connection and reinvention, giving women, especially women over 40, the tools to reinvent their lives in community with support, with coaching. So she's going to tell you all about that. But I think, my goodness, what a critical time for this right now. Certainly coming out of this time during the pandemic, we are all looking at ways in which we've had to reinvent how we handle life on a day-to-day basis. But also many of us have faced major changes in our careers, many changes with our families. So I just know you're going to love my conversation with Lesley. She's great. She is so real. She is so fabulous. And I'm very honored to call her a new friend. But without further ado, I want you to learn all of the gems that she has to share on today's podcast. So here is Lesley Jane Seymour, founder and CEO of Covey Club. Lesley, it is such a pleasure to welcome you to the Wishbeads podcast. Thank you for saying yes.
Yes, of course. I'm so excited. We're going to use your Wishbeads at a big event. I'm really, really excited.
Yeah, so great. I have to say, and I've said this before on the podcast, but one of the greatest gifts of starting this company is the incredible people that I've met along the way. Mm-hmm. And the amazing Joyce Schulman of 99 Walks had a wonderful idea, and that was to gather a small group of women that she really loved and respected and were doing interesting things in the world. And we created this little mastermind group, and that's how we connected.
And I was so honored that she invited me. I mean, I was like, wow, because I would never have met people like you and Christine Deer and everybody who's in that group. I was like, who are these people? I would never in a million years have been able to meet you all.
I know.
So it's totally wonderful and fantastic.
It is wonderful. And I think that this idea of finding peers to support you and to have honest conversations and as a resource for navigating all of the millions of choices you make as a business owner. And it's mostly for us talking about business, but also as a resource. So, I call upon this group to say, hey, I'm looking at this opportunity. How did you do that? Do you have a resource for this? And I think it's actually one of the things that women do very well, more than men.
Yes. And I think we're very good sharers. I think if we can get over the idea of scarcity, there's a big thing that's happened because we're really that second generation of women out there in the workforce, that there's a we were sold this idea of scarcity, that there was only one woman who was going to get into the C-suite. There was only one woman, and the women before us, they actually only had one woman. And a lot of them we used to call them men in skirts. And our generation was brought up with the idea that there might be one woman, and you all had to fight each other for that. I think the new thinking now is that that's just another old arm of the patriarchy. Another way to control women is to say, there's only one spot in the treehouse, and now you got to fight each other for it, instead of actually looking up and saying, hey, wait a minute, we're 51% of the population. We should be here sharing with you. And where there was the old men's club where men would share with each other, they would share resources. They would meet over lunch and, bring so-and-so together and give you my lawyer and give you this. We're now doing that for each other. And there's such huge, huge, huge strength in that. There's huge advantage in that. And why do we all have to reinvent the wheel on our own?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. There's no value to that. It's much better to share and say to each other. And I come to that group for the same reason. We have what we call pods at Covey Club, so that we create these small groups like that, and they can be about, reinventing your career, reinventing other things in your life, like your body, your health, your relationships with your family. And we create these small little support groups, and you can use them as accountability groups. You can use them much like we're using our little, Joyce calling it a crew, which is really cute. Since I live in New Orleans, there's a lot of crews down here. But that is a wonderful way to create support for each other. And especially as entrepreneurs, as you know, my first 2 years were so horrifically lonely, just sitting at my kitchen table, trying to figure out if I could launch something. I'd never been an entrepreneur before. I am an uber extrovert. And until your business is up and running, and until you have momentum, until you have customers, and even so, when you do, it's really a lonely business. It's a lonely process,
Well, I'd love to. I touched on the introduction, a little bit of your background,
Sure.
But you had a prolific career in media and
crazy media.
Yeah. And so can you talk to us about the reinvention, the transition you made from your life in media to deciding to make that reinvention yourself with Covey Club, and then a little bit about what Covey Club is to people that are new to it?
Sure. So I have been an editor-in-chief of many, many women's magazines that were national. My first magazine was YM. It was a teen book. Some of you will remember it. Long time ago, it was called Young Miss.
Yes.
But I ran that. I had so much fun. I had been a writer before that. I had worked at Vogue for 9 years. I was Glamour's beauty editor for 3 years. I started out at Women's Wear Daily, Harper's Bazaar. I was heavy into the fashion area of writing and editing. And when I was able to become an editor-in-chief, it gave me a broader perspective over everything. And I went from YM to Redbook magazine, which was supposed to be for young mothers, but had drifted upward and really had sort of lost its audience. And I repositioned it back for young moms. I was a young mom at the time. So it was great, bringing in my kids and my life. And then I went on to run Mary Claire USA. I've always been a Francophile. I studied French since I was like junior high school and never understood the purpose. Why was I reading Les Miserables during my 8th grade summer? Boy, did that suck. Well, actually, it had a purpose. Later on in life, I got to sit in the Mary Claire offices once a month and look out the window and see the Eiffel Tower. And that was cool. That was a goal of mine, because I'd spent so much time studying French. And then I had gone over as an exchange student when I went to Duke. I went over to Strasbourg with Syracuse University and spent a semester abroad. And it changed my life, changed my perspective. I lived with a French family that was not all about tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. They were all about, we want to live today, and about how important family is. And my family was a typical American family, which was always looking for the next thing, pull yourself up. And they really changed my perspective. I've stayed close with them all my life, and they're close with my kids. I'm close with their grandkids, the whole thing. So it's been a wonderful transition. And I always wanted to work in Paris because I just love France. And I actually, when I graduated from college, I went over to Elle magazine long before Elle launched here in the US. And I went into their offices and I said, I want to work for you. And they were like, you crazy American, get out of here. We don't hire Americans. Like, why would we hire you to, what would to clean the floors? We don't know. So that was my experience before that. But I finally made my way over there. And I had a great run, 4.5 years. What was wonderful about Mary Claire is that it talked more than fashion and beauty. I love fashion and beauty. Now, can't you tell? I didn't know this was video. So here I am in all my t-shirt glory today. But I always loved fashion and beauty, but I always felt it wasn't enough. I always felt like I wanted something more. I always had a conscience about the written word and how it can be used to change the world. I really do believe that one person can change the world. And I really do believe that through media telling stories, you can change the world. And that is really what we did at Mary Claire. It had such an international presence and as such an outward looking perspective. It had fashion, it had beauty, it had all those great things, but it also talked to women of the world and to the plight of the women of the world. And when 9/11 came, I had just taken over the magazine. My readers already knew who the Taliban was because we'd sent, it was Eve Ensler to go under a burqa to, and I can't remember, I think it was Afghanistan, and talk about the plight of women over there. We didn't know anything about that. This was long before anybody was talking about these things or even looking at women around the world and understanding how we were all connected. So that was wonderful. It was also the place where I learned that the devil doesn't just wear Prada, the devil also wears Dior. So I was blown out of that job there because I thought you were supposed to sell magazines. And in reality, I was supposed to make my boss look good. I had no idea. I was so naive. I was selling magazines. I didn't know it was just about making her look good. So then I spent 1.5 years and I went out as being super mom until my daughter told me that I needed to go back and get a job after 1.5 years. She was like, okay, this super mom thing is really good. And I really wanted it. And I was like annoying you about it. Now you're really a pain in the neck. And she literally said to me, you need to go get a job. She was going into 9th grade and she's like, I'm going to go away to boarding school. And I'm like, what? I'm like, super mom, your friends are over. We're having weekends together. We're baking things. You need a job, mom. So I went back and I got the More magazine job, which I thought would be just 2 years. And it ended up being 8 years. And it was fabulous. And talking to women 40 plus was incredible. We made history by having Mrs. Obama guest edit the issue while she was First Lady. It went around the world, had it's probably the biggest number of hits around the world. It was something like 6.5 billion placements around the world. And then they closed it like less than 6 months later. Hey, you do something historical and then they close it. Yeah, whatever. Like why hang with it? You just made history. So they closed it. My readers were really angry. They came to me on social media and said, do something else for us. I had, at the time, because I saw that publishing was in danger, you didn't have to be Einstein to know that, when publishing companies were laying off 400 people at a time every 6 months, like this is not a good scene. We were being eaten alive by Apple and by Facebook. And the advertising dollars, unfortunately, the business side of the media companies just, they didn't know how to fight back and they weren't fast enough. And I said, look, I don't want to do this anymore. I've run 4 magazines. It has been the ride of a lifetime. I mean, what I used to say about being an editor-in-chief of a women's magazine is it was Hollywood for non-actors. I didn't have to come up and do what you did. Like I couldn't do what you did, but I got to walk the red carpet. I got to hang out with cool people. I got to be on stage with people who I could talk to, blah, blah, blah. And, I got a lot of pictures taken, but I didn't have to be an actor. I couldn't do that. So when that died off, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. What can I do? I'd gone back to Columbia. I was getting my degree in sustainability, my master's. I thought I'll switch over into the beauty business really needs help in the sustainability area. And I was always very interested in environmental science. I had originally gone to Duke to be a marine biologist.
Interesting.
And yeah, that was my original trajectory. My parents were in the science field. My dad was a doctor. And the idea of being a writer, which is what I always wanted to be, was just horrific to him. Was like, why would you even do this? You're going to die a painful death in a garret somewhere. You need to have science. But when I got to Duke, I was just being killed by these guys who had a lot of science background in their high school. I did not. And I was like a mediocre science student and a fabulous English student. So I said, okay, I'm going to follow my heart and I'm going to try to make a go of it. And the irony is all my friends who, studied so hard and became, brain surgeons and, like did the whole Duke medical school thing, and they would stay up till 4 a.m. to do their tests. They ran into managed care. And
Wow.
I actually probably, out earned them at some point just by a fluke of history. Anyway, so I said, I can't do this anymore. Anyway, I was getting my degree. And then the company I was working for pulled the plug on more 2 years ahead of me getting my degree because I was doing it at night. And I said, okay, now what do I do? Like, I'm not fully, I can't, I don't have my degree in sustainability yet. And my readers were so angry. They said, do something else for us. So I thought, I'll just double time this. Let me see. And I'm a good researcher. And I said to them, here's a survey. Tell me what you want. And anybody who's in research is going to laugh their butt off listening to this. I made a survey of 54 questions and 627 people took it to the end. 2,000 started out.
Wow.
But 627 took it to the end. I literally took everything they said. I made a mind map of everything they wanted. I read a couple of books about the lean startup. And I said, okay, I understand you shouldn't make the whole pizza pie and come out and say, ta-da. I didn't have the money to do that anyway. I took my severance and I made a piece of pizza. And I said, here's what I think it should be. And I tested my way in. And now we're 3 years down the road. This is finishing up our 4th year. We've morphed, we've changed. And the whole point of Covey was to find a meeting place for women 40 plus once More magazine went out of business. And my best customers are people who knew me from either More, Mary Claire, Redbook. Some people actually knew me from YM, which is really very funny. And to have those conversations that we used to have in print, but live. And so what we say, and we've really become the reinvention experts, and what we learned over the pandemic, because during the pandemic, we really shifted and really we teach a lot. And people come to us when they are in transition, Alexa. You're going to, around age 40, it could be 50 or 60 for some, you are not going to have this straight line, right? There is going to be a moment where you're going to have a health issue. You're going to have a family issue. You're going to have empty nest. You're going to lose your job. You're going to be downsized. You're going to be bought out. Something is going to happen.
Yeah.
And you are going to find yourself in a situation where you have to say, oh my God, what I was doing before is no longer working. How do I start over? And that's what Covey's a small group of birds. I wanted it to be small and intimate. We're kind of like a boutique business. And what we do is we hold a place for you while you reinvent, while you come and figure out what you're going to do next. And what I learned during the pandemic is that we can't tell you what your reinvention is going to be, but what we can do is we can bring you in, we can educate you, we can teach you everything about how to fix your LinkedIn, about how to write a new resume, about how to appear on video, about weight loss, about menopause, about all those things going on in your life, about the empty nest, about handling older children. We can help you with all of that kind of stuff. And then we hook you up with all these women who, or some of them are around the world, who have come in and said, I'm in the same transition.
Yeah.
And you all get together either through our teachings or through our masterminds or our coaching sessions. And you will have movement and you will find your way towards that next thing. And we have seen people come through Covey Club and they go back to school. We have seen them come in, having lost a major job, thinking I'm too old to get another job and I can't get it, and have lost my confidence, or I need new contacts, and they get a new job and they stay with us. And it has been this incredible learning thing that we have learned. We really know a lot about it's holding a space for you while you figure out what is next for you. Because you can't necessarily do that with people who know you. In the beginning, I thought, well, is this going to be creepy or strange to like tell people you don't know your deepest thoughts and fears and concerns, and, oh my God, I'm afraid I'm never going to work again, or, whatever. Actually, it's easier.
Oh, it's much easier.
Yes.
It's much easier. And I think that when you are with people that know you, they tend to drag your old story.
Yes.
And I call it like dreaming you. They're dreaming you the way that they know you over and over again. And when you're reinventing, when you're even curious about reinvention, it's almost an invitation for you to start with a blank slate, a blank canvas.
Yes.
And when someone who doesn't know you, you create a safe space to meet another stranger on the internet in a safe space.
Yes.
You give them, they just don't bring any baggage. They're just looking at you like, oh, well, what do you love to do? Or what makes your heart sing? Or what skills do you have? Or whatever. I love that.
Yes.
I think we need
and
that.
That's the secret sauce. Yeah, that's the secret sauce. And I think part of what you do with Wishbeads, which we're going to use in a ceremony for our big get together on November 11th through 14th. We usually do an escape with Covey to a spa, but nobody's ready to go to a spa this year at all. So they're coming down to visit me in New Orleans. I reinvented by leaving New York City after 40 years and coming down to a city that I love and giving it a whole new whirl, totally different experience, totally different life. But everybody wants to come here. So I'm bringing lots of Covey Clubbers here, and we're going to use the Wishbeads because I think Wishbeads, it is about dreaming. It's about saying, I am going to commit to this new thought of who I might be or where I want to go. And what I've learned, I also have a podcast, which is called Reinvent Yourself with Lesley Jane Seymour. And I've interviewed 150 women. And what you learn is anybody can reinvent themselves. It has to be, you can come from anywhere, money, no money, corporate, no corporate, education, no education. It's a matter of mindset. And you, Alexa, I mean, I've interviewed you on the podcast. You are like the amazing person about just seeing it, envisioning it, moving forward with the vision. And I love that part of Wishbeads. I'm so excited about adding that to our event.
Oh, I'm so excited that you are going to incorporate it. I really am. And I wish I could be there. The time
I know. I'm going to try to figure out.
But we'll get there. Yes. Yeah, we'll get there. Absolutely. And I think that it's funny with the similar, there's a parallel here between wishing and reinvention in that it's something that someone desires and then simultaneously has a lot of fear about because it's that unknown, like, what is my life going to look like on the other side? And that hesitation is what keeps people stuck, just having the same thing. But doesn't it feel incredible to just release that, move through that fear just to see what happens? Because you really, truly will only regret not trying. Yes. And when you can wish together, reinvent together, suddenly you have these peers that are literally cheering you on.
And fall on your face together. I mean,
absolutely. And falling on your face is actually part of the deal. And then you realize, whoa, that happened and I survived.
Right.
It wasn't it wasn't what I thought. Sometimes it's better than you think. And sometimes you're like, okay, well, that didn't work. Yeah, I feel disappointed, but like life goes on.
Right. And you learn something. As long as you learn something, it's not a loss, I feel.
Yeah, it's not a loss. And it's also a muscle. So when you exercise that moment of action or the saying it out loud or sharing with a friend or all of that is building a very critical muscle of confidence. Then you take that confidence to make the next introduction, to take the next action step, to even believe in yourself. Like that self-love piece, it's pretty much everything.
But the butterflies in the stomach thing, Alexa, is a sign that you are moving into the right space if you want change. And people tend to be, if you study enough and you listen enough, we do a lot of coaching. I have a lot of coaches around me. I'm not a coach, but they talk about how the brain is actually oriented towards making sure you're not in danger, right? I mean, think about that from prehistoric times. I mean, the guy who walked out of the cave when the dinosaur saber-toothed tiger was out there, he's not around anymore to pass his genes along, right? So the people who stayed in the cave because they realized dinosaur at the door, don't go out, that's us. So we have this negative tilt. And so we're afraid of change. We're afraid of, putting ourselves out there, being laughed at, especially as you get older. I had a lot of people say to me, you've had so much success. Aren't you afraid of failing? Like you're going to fail in public. And I was like, I've had so much success. Yes, it's wonderful. That's why I don't care. I've got it to spend. Like if someone's going to hold that against me, then they don't really know who I am anyway. So,
and I'm sure that when you left your New York City life of 40 years,
oh my God,
with everything in place and blah, 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 to say, oh, we're just going to go, start over again, make new friends, be in a new neighborhood, get a new home, the whole thing. Ooh, I bet that hit all kinds of buttons with your community.
People still ask me why. And the people down here are like, why did you move here? They're like, what made you? They're like, do you have family here? We're like, no. Do you have and it's like, the people here are more mystified than the people up there.
So funny.
And I'll tell you, it was very practical thinking. We were in the New York suburbs. And I will tell you this, if you are in your 50s or 60s and you are thinking, I'm done with the raising kids place I'm living. I moved here because of the schools, which we did. And our kids loved the schools. They had fabulous kid life there, riding their bikes to school, the whole thing. There comes a point where your kids are not coming home all the time. They're not going to. They're going to come home for a week here, a week there, and you are back to living your life, either as a couple or singly. What are you doing in the suburbs? Like, there's really nothing. I found there's no culture. There was no culture. There was nothing that I was attached to. My life was in New York City. I was a commuter. We looked at going back to New York, but I'd kind of done New York and we don't like the cold weather. Jeff and I both hate it with a passion. We've never been cold weather people, but we were there because our careers were there. So we're like, wow, our careers no longer are there. I'm running a internet company from my home. Jeff was in finance. He had left. He was done. He retired. Why are we sitting in the New York suburbs? Let's go somewhere fun. Let's go where our kids will come. Let's make it an easy plane ride. Let's go to a university town because we like to teach and we also like to learn. Let's go to a city that is got all kinds of racial, economic, age mixing. I don't want to be stuck with just one age group. I don't want to be stuck with one economic group. I like variety. I like that mix. And we had looked seriously at going back to Paris. That was always a dream of mine, but it's too hard for the kids to get there. And God, who knew COVID was coming? So, but we thought, my daughter's still in graduate school, so she still would like to be close to us. So we were like, okay, let's go to the place what's the closest to France we can get to and not go to France.
The French
and that's
Quarter.
Really New Orleans. Yeah, it's New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans it's not a very American city. It is, his whole history is European. It still has a European feel to it. And so we said, what the hell? We've been coming here for 30 years just as vacationers. And if we don't like it, we'll come down here, we'll try it. If we don't like it, we'll go somewhere else. And so we just decided, I think my husband didn't realize we were doing this permanently. We bought a house. I think he thought he was buying a second home. I was like, no, we don't need the first home. First home's too big. Kids are gone. It's us and the kids.
It's just us.
It's us.
It's just us and all of my Covey visitors.
That's it. Right. My Covey visitors. Exactly. So, so it's just been a wonderful thing. And the point is, what they tell you is if you don't make that move in your 50s and 60s, you will not. Because
then there's
will happen. You will get sick or whatever, and you will never, ever leave. If you want to make that physical move, you need to do it then.
Yeah. And Lesley, another thing that I love about your methodology of reinvention
Uh-huh.
is so similar to my take on wishing, in that there is intention, there is this sort of visioning aspect, even if you call
Yes.
visioning just like using your imagination and picturing where you want to live. That's
Yes.
that's visioning. But there's also a real practicality to it. So what you
Oh,
just
totally.
outlined for everybody is like basically make a list of things that are important to you. What is like the things that you actually would really love in your new experience? And you just check them off.
Yes.
And suddenly you get out of this paralyzed place of like, we could move anywhere. And that
Yes.
overwhelm keeps you so stuck.
It
And that
does.
same idea of people who are kind of intimidated by wishing because it's like, I don't know, there's just so much I want to wish for. Well, there's a
Start
methodology.
small.
Yeah,
Start
start
small.
small. You can
Right.
start small with something you consciously want to wish for, or do a wish circle in which you may not know what comes up for you, but
Right.
there's no limit to what you can wish for. There's just one place to begin, and let that beginning just feel good enough that you want to take action towards it. Like, let
Yeah.
it be fun. And you can meet that intention with something that does feel doable. So let's say someone is thinking about moving to a city. In fact, my husband and I, our family, we were considering leaving Los Angeles. And we took this so far that we met with a realtor. We saw this beautiful town that we were really drawn to in upstate New
Where?
York. It was in
Upstate New
upstate New
York?
York. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Tiny
Okay.
town, tiny town. And
Okay.
then I was like, okay, well, if we're really serious about it, we can't just fall in love with it in the summer. We have to actually
Oh
go.
no.
Yeah, we have to go at some really uncharming time, like
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 January,
no, even worse. We went in February,
February.
the
Oh
third week
God.
of February. So we got a cute little Airbnb. We took the kids and we were there driving around being like, this would be the school. This would be where we go grocery shopping. We took the visualization
Wow.
so far to really like play it out, the whole thing, play it out. And then we got home and a week later, the kids sat us down and they're like, we are not moving. We do not want to move. We really love where we live.
Okay, but that helped you solve that problem,
It
that
really
question.
did, because the amount
Right.
of energy that my husband and I spent noodling this idea and like on Zillow and like it was actually a thing that we
Wow.
found didn't lift us up, but
Right.
it kind of weighed us down, and it
Right.
gave us another option that was like, oh, actually our kids like you are with us for just a handful more years.
That's right.
And there is a place for us to have this sweet little house near the beach in Southern California. And we may not sell it. We may do other things with it. And it may mean that my husband and I get some property somewhere on the East Coast. And that's our dream. But,
Yes.
there's flexibility, but there's also like practicality. There's just
Yes.
practicality. So people don't
You
have to be
need,
so intimidated by this idea of reinvention or wishing.
yes, yes. And that's what we do really well. Having grown up in women's magazines, everything was about making everything very practical and useful. I mean, that is
Yeah.
really what women's magazines were all about. And that
Right.
was what was poo-pooed by all the men's magazines, was that, instead of just talking about your dream, it was how to get there,
Right.
how to create the finances. It was always how to, and that was
Right.
always looked down upon for
But
whatever
so
reason.
useful.
Totally useful. And look, yeah, what's the good with the dream if there's no steps to get there? That doesn't really help you. So
That's right.
we've always been a super practical. And I'll tell you, one of the things my daughter said, I said, we looked in Florida, we found some really nice places there. And she goes, it's so boring there. Good luck. I'll see you once a year. And I was like, all right, maybe not. And you know what's wonderful about New Orleans? Our friends want to come here. I'm
Yeah.
on the phone. They're like, oh my God, I'm dying to come to New Orleans. When can we come? I'm like, okay. You have to think of the whole thing. And I'm a big chart maker. I break everything down into charts, into yes, no, yes, no. Almost everything can be broken down that way. You can actually force yourself to really feel it and live it and think it by creating charts. Whenever, I'm sure you did this too, Alexa, because you seem like the type where if you have a big decision to make,
Yeah.
You write it down. And what I do is you say, okay, I'm going to live with it for a week. For
Yep.
a week, I've moved to Nebraska. What does that feel like? I'm telling the kids I moved to Nebraska. I tell like, what
Yep.
that's it. I've moved to Nebraska. How am I feeling? And on Friday, you're going like, that's not what I thought.
Yeah.
You
And it's
know?
funny because Robert, my husband, was noodling an idea. Let's just put it that way. And I said, well, how do you feel? Like, just
Yes.
imagine you've made that
Yes.
decision.
Imagine, yes.
And
That's
and
what I
how do
do.
you feel? And I thought, God, this is like such a feminine way. It's a much more easily accessed by a feminine sensibility. And my husband has a lot of feminine energy, but I found that, wow, what an invaluable thing. So he didn't right away say like, I don't know what you're talking about. He just sat with it.
That's
And it's
great.
something that I actually call crossword brain. I don't know if you do crossword puzzles,
Mhm.
but I do crossword puzzles. I used to do more of them. But crossword brain is you sit down and you do the crossword, and there's kind of a methodology, like you do the easy ones quickly and then you cross reference, whatever. There's like a whole way of doing it, right? Or at least that's how I was taught. And then you get to a place and you're literally like, I know nothing else. I'm not going to Google things, but I physically don't know anymore, which means it's time to put the crossword down. And you do. You put the
Okay.
crossword down, the old fashioned, newspapers, and you put it down. And you leave it. You don't think about it, because who's going to be thinking about a crossword while you're going about your busy life? Nobody. But then a magical thing happens. When you pick this crossword back up a couple days later, maybe a week, you pick it back up, you look at it, and suddenly the answers are there.
Oh, very
There is
interesting.
a part of your brain
It's
or
been
your
working on
being
it in
that
the
has been
back,
working on somehow, or something has
freeing things
happened.
up. Yeah.
Right. And you
Wow.
pick it
Very
up again,
interesting.
and suddenly you know the answers. You know maybe
Oh,
5 more answers. And you're
so
like,
interesting.
what is that about? Put it back down. And I'd like to think that when I have other things that I'm noodling, that I get to a place where I'm like, I do not know the answer to this. I just can't see my way through this. You acknowledge it and you let that go, because there is another part of
Love.
your being that's working on it, processing it, feeling it, imagining it, sleeping, dreaming it, whatever your process is. And then you pick it up again and you say, what's going on here?
Isn't that
What
interesting?
And so I find that crossword brain is literally I don't know if I've heard anyone ever refer to it that way, but
But that's interesting.
yeah, but that's just like what you were talking about, where you just sort of sit with it, allow
Right.
space.
Right. Space will help. Yeah.
Space
Yeah.
will help, and it gives you some kind of perspective where new information can synthesize with your perspective. And you get to a place where it's much more easily, you can find an answer much more readily. You can trust your answer much more readily.
But it's wonderful. I will tell you that it is so renewing when you have that sense that you are stuck, and you have that sense of, I feel like there's no excitement to my life right
Mhm.
now, or you feel like, is this all there is?
Oof.
You get to that point, and everybody gets to that point at different points in their life,
Yeah.
and there are different answers for that. But there is a point when you've been in your career for a long time, when your family's established, or whatever, you're established alone and whatever you're going to be doing, there comes a point where sometimes the absolute best thing to do is pick yourself up and move yourself physically somewhere else,
Yeah.
because it rattles everything. It rattles. I mean, and it was terrifying. I mean, like, for the first, it's about now I can start talking to people when I drive. For 2 years, I couldn't double task because I didn't know where the hell I was going. I mean, I could
Yeah.
not talk to you in the car. I did not know where I was going.
Think of all
And
those
that was
wonderful
2 years.
neurons
Yes.
processing and
And it's very,
reimaging.
yes,
Absolutely.
it's
I even
really
said,
renewing.
even this idea of like, let's say you can't just, pick up and move right away. Your habits, even the way that you drive to the grocery store, the post
Change
office,
it.
change it,
Go a
change
different
it.
route. Yep.
Yeah. Just
Yep.
give yourself a new experience. And, people are talking about maybe my kids are talking about, cars driving themselves. I said, terrible for the human brain. We need to be in environments where we are stimulated, where we are on
Stimulated.
task.
Yeah.
And if we
Yeah.
become that place where everything is so passive, it's like that film
Yeah.
Wall-E, where we
Yeah.
just become
Very
these
interesting.
blobs that are just blobs.
That's
And
so
I
interesting.
think
Yeah.
this idea of the stimulation of the brain, the
Yes.
activation of being in life through reinvention, through new internet friendships, through
Yes.
new communities, new wishes, it
Yes.
is the vehicle that keeps us tasting life in an exciting new way.
Yes. And when you throw yourself in to a new community and a new culture, that really comes into relief. I mean, there are hilarious things that happen because of that.
Yeah.
And just, you learn about yourself and you learn about your culture. As a journalist, we used to say all the time, oh, I know I live in this New York bubble. But until you leave the bubble, you don't really understand how much of a bubble that is. I mean,
That's right.
now that I'm completely out of it, I look at all these people and all the newscasts and all they talk about is New York this and New York that. And I'm like, what's going on with you guys? There's a whole world out here.
There's a whole world.
Like, yeah. And I'm like, wow, I can see that bubble really well.
Yeah.
But then there are cultural things where I was having, because my daughter's in dental school, she wanted to see these x-rays that I had of a tooth that was being reabsorbed. So I called because it's a rather unusual event. So I called the dentist and I said, can you send this up to my daughter? She's in dental school. She wants to see it and give me a second opinion, whatever. So I gave her the name, and it was my daughter's name at upenn.edu. It never got there. I called back and Lake said, I didn't get it. I called back and I said, oh, didn't you send it? She said, I did. And I said, did you send it to this? She said, oh, no, I thought you said U10, University of Tennessee.
Oh.
Nobody up north would think University of Tennessee just because we don't deal with the University of Tennessee. She heard U10 and I was like, wow, that's so interesting. Like, just talk about the bubble. That
unconscious biases. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like we just don't even think of these other things.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
We learn so much.
Yeah. And I think the one thing I'd like to add, I mean, I literally could talk to you forever, is I think that in a position, sometimes, again, you're feeling like you're wishing, maybe it feels like you're in a place of lack or you're wanting, and it feels kind of like, or reinvention. It's scary. It's like, what's on the other side? But also what I have been phenomenally impressed by is when people wake up to the fact that they also have so much to give in these forums.
Yes.
So every month we do wish circles. You're my special wish circle guest in November, which is awesome. But I've watched these individuals really step up and give so much to other people. And I would imagine the same with Covey Club, that people think they may be signing up because they're needing so much. And then they step into it and realize, oh my gosh, my perspective can help others. So I often say, like, wishing is an act of selfless giving, because your hope, your action, your exercising confidence and stepping into a new way of being is actually a light for other people.
And you don't realize that.
You don't realize that.
And you have to, I actually talk about it as radical giving. What I try to do is be aware of giving as often as I can. And the weird thing is, and I know you've discovered this, and this is not the reason to do it, but if you are a natural giver, which is what I am anyway, and I always thought that was, people told me you're really stupid. You're not, you should ask for things back. And I'm like, it's just not my style. I can't really do that. It comes back to you. The more you give, if you can, when you're weighing two things and you're thinking, I could pick up the phone and call Jane and I could do blah, 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 or I could not do that. The more you give, the more you get. It is a weird, and it comes boomeranging back to you, not by, if I give to Alexa, she's going to give back to me. It's not like that. It's like I give to Alexa because I want to give to her, and something else happens that brings it back around. And it may have been you telling somebody something, or somebody heard something, or it just, there is this, sounds really cheesy and very California of me to say, but the more you give, the more you get. It's totally cheesy, but it really is absolutely true.
It's true. And also, I think there's a wonderful freedom and trust in not keeping score.
Yes.
Like when you actually just trust that as a philosophy and a way of being, you know, we have so much chatter in our minds and so many things preoccupying our awareness, you know, in our waking hours and even in our asleep hours, that it's true, Lesley, that like at a certain point, if that's just the way that you are, then you trust it and you don't have to occupy any petty thoughts being like, you know, are they validating me? I mean, oh my gosh, I would say, well, that's one thing maybe I learned from my experience in the entertainment industry. It can be quite petty in that world.
Oh, and talk about petty.
That,
you want to go to publishing? Oh my God.
So when, you know, what's really lovely, and I find that it's the older you get, and this is going to sound crazy, but like maybe not the most elegant way to state this, but the older you get, the less you care.
Oh, and totally.
Caring means it's really that preoccupation of keeping track, the preoccupation of getting your due or your credit or whatever. When you let all that go, you have so much more bandwidth to be like, I am so doing my own thing. I'm in integrity. Maybe, you know, maybe I make mistakes. That's okay. It's human. But if I get to just sort of rock who I am and be who I am unapologetically, there is such a freedom in that. Yes. You know, where I didn't think I was being uptight in my youth, but I remember going to one of my agents and I had some headshots taken, and you know, and I wasn't like I wasn't like maybe I was in my early 30s. Okay. So which
way over the
very
hill.
old. And my agent, who was a woman,
oh dear,
said to me, Alexa, I really think you need an eyelid lift.
Oh my God.
And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, that's actually your advice to me, is I need an eyelid lift? And I thought, this is not for me anymore. It's just not for me. Like, this is so far away from 30s,
where they were telling you needed an eyelid lift. Oh my God.
Yeah. I thought, no, it's time for me to go. And you know, and the irony is I've actually all these years, because next year I'll be 50. And I'm thinking next year, there's a film I'm going to do.
Oh, called?
Well, we'll talk about that later.
All right.
But we'll save that for another podcast.
Okay.
But the truth is that sometimes in life, the timelines that you think, the career trajectory, the whatever, life is going to take you on twists and turns. And it's not like this big drama, you know, saying goodbye to your acting career forever. I knew when I put it like in a different category, and when I recognized that I really longed to help people in a different way, which turned into teaching, which turned into intention setting jewelry and all the rest of it, I thought, you know, it'll be great when I'm older and I don't care. That's when I'll be able to do the work that really matters to me. And I thought, here I am all these years later, going to shoot a movie soon. So,
I love it.
Yeah,
that's
super
fantastic.
fun.
They call it the fuck you 50s. You know that. That's the term.
Boop, attention, young ears. Boop. But I love it.
You have to censor me. Sorry.
I love it.
But it really is. You get to that point where I remember all the time I wasted worrying about the girls, the copywriters at Vogue, whether they liked me or not, or whether they liked the shoes I wore, or did I unintentionally say something to make them upset, or did I look the wrong way at, you know, Anna Wintour in the elevator, or did I? And then now you look back and you go, Anna Wintour didn't see me in the elevator.
No, she didn't see you at all.
She's looking past me, thinking about her lunch with some famous person, and didn't even know I existed.
Yes.
And
which is its own situation. But yes, I think everybody obsesses about things that nobody is paying attention to. Nobody.
No one cares. No one cares about you the way you do. And 98% of it will all be forgotten. Yeah. So do what you want to do.
Do what you want to do and love yourself along the way, and be your best cheerleader and your best friend and your biggest supporter and all of that. And when you can exercise that muscle enough, that muscle or those behaviors become so readily available for others. And we need that love right now.
Yes.
And we need that encouragement from one another. And
I agree.
Thank God there are things like Zoom and communities and services. And I so encourage everybody to check out Covey Club. And we want a full report on how your group loves their Wishbeads and the
I
Wishbeads
will let you
experience.
know. I'm really excited. We've got to get them all on board, and we got to get them to get them. They got to pick out their Wishbeads this week.
Yeah,
so it's going to be
pick out
fun.
their Wishbeads. And I'm so excited to have you as our special guest at the end of November as my co-host for our Wish Circle. So we're going to include links to that. But can you share, Lesley, how everybody can learn more about you and Covey Club?
Yes. CoveyClub.com is where they can come to learn all about Covey Club. The podcast is called Reinvent Yourself with Lesley Jane Seymour. It's everywhere. You can come. I'm also always interested if anybody ever wants to pitch me themselves. I'm interested in people who've reinvented themselves. As I said, I've done 150 interviews. I'm looking for interesting reinventions or people who have come up with ways to help people reinvent themselves. It could be both, or it could be one or the other. And they can reach me. Yeah, well, because that's of interest as well. I mean, if you're trying to figure it out, right? Yeah. So and you can reach me at Lesley, Lesley at CoveyClub.com. And
I love that. Yeah, and if you're really sitting, listening, or watching, you magnificent human being who's thinking, oh, I don't have an interesting enough story. Yes, you do.
Oh, a lot of people. And I do the famous to the non-famous. I mean, I think there's a lot. I mean, we can learn something from famous people. Yes, but they're not the only ones. And in fact, sometimes it's the real people who have much more interesting stories to tell. And they haven't been told.
Yeah. I agree. And there is always, I have someone I know right off the top of my head that you should definitely talk to.
Oh, good.
But I think that people don't realize that they can pitch themselves. Yes. And make amazing connections. And some of my best stories are when I just went for it. And I just said, can't be attached to the results, but boy, oh boy, did I have amazing doors open just because I asked.
Yes. And you never know. You never know. You never know. So anyway, it's so exciting to talk to you, Alexa.
You too. I adore you. And I am so honored to be in your crew. I'm honored to be in your podcast and just be in your orbit. I'm just so inspired by you. So keep doing the beautiful work you're doing.
Thank you. Back at you.
Well, I hope now you have gotten so excited about this idea of reinventing yourself. So whether you are ready to wish, whether you are still working towards your wish, and hopefully you've kind of turned up the volume on your excitement, your compassion, your curiosity, and your confidence to know that reinvention is part of the game. I hope you will also join me and Lesley at the end of November on our virtual Wish Circle. She is going to be our hostess with the mostest, our co-hostess. And because it's never too late to wish and it's never too late to reinvent yourself. And the benefit is when you do it in community, you have that support that you crave. We all crave it. And so I hope you will join us. Thank you again for listening. If you love the podcast, please leave a review. That really helps. Please share it with a friend who could use a little hope and inspiration. And if you have ideas or want to be included in an upcoming episode of the Wishbeads podcast, be in touch. Write us at hello@wishbeads.com. And you can find all the links to find Lesley online, including the Covey Club, in all of the show notes attached to this episode. Have an amazing week. You absolutely deserve it. And I'll see you next time.